Hi there, welcome and thank you for tuning in. My name is Jason Scholder, and this is Learning to Fail. People are complicated, and I know a lot of complicated people. My guest today is Julie Scoggins. Julie is a 19-year veteran comedian. I had the good fortune of hosting her shows when she came to town. Comics come in all shapes and sizes. Julie is tall, thin, and full of life. From the first moment we got on the phone, we couldn't stop talking. She's funny, frank, and unafraid. I learned a lot from my conversations with Julie. If only I could have recorded them all. Before we get started, I just want to say how much I appreciate people taking time out of their lives to talk to me, let alone listen. This podcast is my avenue for expanding the way I think and the things I think about. If you like what you hear, please tell your friends about Learning to Fail and encourage them to tell theirs. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes and check out our website for additional information about each of the people we interview. While you're there, please visit our Donate and Amazon pages. Each page will give you clear instructions on what to do. For the time being, we're a completely donation-based podcast, so all of our episodes are being brought to you by you. Our donation page will allow you to make one-time or recurring donations. Our Amazon portal enables you to support the podcast without spending any extra money of your own. Please bookmark our Amazon page and start your shopping there every time you visit or buy anything on Amazon. The most helpful thing you can do is simply to listen to the podcast and encourage others to do the same. The world will be a better place when we can all start learning to fail together. Let's hear what Julie Scoggins is up to. This woman is one of my favorites. Julie Scoggins, how cool to be able to sit down with you after performing with you last night and getting ready to perform again tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to North Carolina. Oh, you live in North Carolina. Welcome.
I live here.
Welcome
home.
Welcome back home. You know, you have to pass through South Carolina to get here, so it almost feels like a different state, Charlotte. Like whenever I go there, I always feel like...
You go through South Carolina?
I used to. Actually, the longer I've lived here, the more I've realized that's
I cut through Shelby.
Yeah, right. That's a better way to go. Well, now what I do is I go through... I go the other way.
I was going to ride my motorcycle up here, but it's turning cold, so I'm glad I didn't. I actually had the foresight to go look at the forecast and see, because sometimes I'll set out, you know, and then it'll change a lot, especially if you're gone several days. And boy, I went out, I rode my motorcycle once to Chattanooga from Charlotte.
Oh, really?
And it was a couple of years ago. Remember Hurricane Sandy? Remember when Hurricane Sandy happened?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And when I left Charlotte on the bike, it was like mid-70s, 75, 77 degrees. It was gorgeous. And then while I was in Chattanooga, Hurricane Sandy came through and with it a front. And by the time I got ready to ride back, it was freezing along 40 through Asheville.
Wow.
And sleet. And so I went south through Atlanta, which was 50 and rain. And it was miserable. Yeah. And I just, 50 degrees and rain at 60 miles an hour is not a good day.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Not, and no matter what kind of clothes you have and gear and all that, screw that. I just want a car at that point.
Yeah, no, motorcycles are a fair weather travel instrument.
I want a windshield and a heater.
Did you have like a...
I have a windshield, but that was it.
And does that blow the weather over you, most of it?
It helps. It
helps,
keeps it from feeling... Rain feels like needles.
Yeah.
If it hits bare skin, you know, on a bike, but I was covered up pretty good, but still, you know, there's always little creases and cracks where the wind gets through. It's just not good. So, plus everybody else is driving crazy, and it's more dangerous too. They can't see you good. And
have you always ridden motorcycles?
Off and on, you know, since I was probably 17.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
And then I got out of it for a long time, and then my husband wanted one, and he bought one several years ago. I've had the one I got now for 8 years, but he bought the one several years ago, and he would go to work and leave the key, and I'd go. I'd ride it, and he'd come home, and he got a little aggravated because he's like, you need to get your own. I don't know why. He's one of these particular people that really likes their stuff the way they leave it.
Right.
And I'm not as meticulous, so I don't like wipe it down and all that when I'm done. I mean, I just like,
right.
put it, and then he was like, you've been on my bike again, and he wasn't mad, but in the interest of keeping the peace, you need to pick your battles to stay married. And
yeah, totally.
That ain't one of them.
Yeah.
So, plus, get your own bike. Well, all right then.
Okay, yeah.
If I have to, twist my arm.
And so if I see your two bikes side by side, is it like a Felix and Oscar situation? Is yours covered in mud and his is sparkling
it's nice.
and clean?
It's just he's an engineer, so he's really picky about things. He always, keeps everything very neat and clean.
How did you guys meet?
I don't even remember.
No.
Well, I had a boyfriend that went to school with him.
Okay.
That was in high school with my husband.
Okay.
And so we were just friends of friends.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And we were just around. I mean, I knew him for 12 years before I ever even dated him.
Okay.
Because,
Well, how did you end up dating?
we both moved away from Charlotte
All right.
for like 3 years. He moved up near D.C. I moved to South Carolina for a little bit. Then when we both moved back, I got laid off. I worked for Kroger supermarkets. I got laid off from a job, so I started cutting grass. I love to cut grass. It's
the only
so
job
satisfying.
It's the only job I've ever been fired from. Is mowing lawns.
Well, you just didn't show up or something, because how'd you get fired from that?
I just, I hated it, and
I love to cut grass.
Yeah, no,
Even hot and sticky, all that. I don't care.
Here's how much they hated me too. Was it was in Martha's Vineyard, which is a pretty like uppity place, and I'd been given this job as a favor. I was young, and the guy who owned the landscaping company did all this landscaping for a family friend who had like a really famous garden in Martha's Vineyard. So she was famous for designing the garden, and he did all the work. Anyway, he ran, a landscaping business. A lot of their bread and butter was mowing lawns. And they put me on this, job with this guy who was just a psychotic drug user, and, and he actually told the boss, I told him I wasn't, we would talk, like two guys in the truck. I was like, I don't know if this is the right job for me, and he told the boss that I was thinking about quitting. He didn't need to do that.
No.
And so on what turned out to be my last day, I got there at the beginning of the season, so everything was first cut. So all the grass was, 3 or 4 feet tall. And they gave me their busted ass oldest mower. And they also set me out there with his foreman, who was raised in a real military household, so he was a total asshole. Mm-hmm. And the mower broke like 4 times during the day, and I had to fix it. And when I was done mowing this lawn, it was a power mower, but it didn't have propulsion, I had to push it. And when I was done doing that for 8 hours, they fired me. And they had been planning to fire me all day long. They just put me on that shitty lawn as my last day. That was their goodbye gesture to me.
Right.
Yeah. That was. Yeah. And the guy was like, the guy who'd been a complete asshole to me the whole time was like, well, Jason, this is a hard part of my job, and I really hate having to do this, but I think we're going to have to let you go. And I just looked at him like, you're a fucking dick. And I just walked away.
Did he pay you?
They paid me.
Well, as long as they paid you.
No, they paid me. They weren't going to not do that because they had this other relationship, And the guy wasn't dishonest. Mm. He just didn't like me.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the job. But I would have quit respectfully. I would have sat down and said, listen, I want to thank you, but I don't think, this is for me. So I'll work as long as you need me to.
Right.
But then, I want to stop.
Yeah.
And he would have either said leave now or 2 weeks notice. I'd only worked there for 2 weeks. And but instead they just put me in that
yeah. They don't want you around for short timer attitude.
Yeah, no, I don't blame them, but they didn't have to be.
They didn't have to be like that.
No, they didn't have to be like that.
Yeah,
they took pleasure in it.
People like being the dumper instead of the dumpy.
Yeah.
So that's all that I think he was trying to.
And I didn't get credit for some things too. I remember like they were they were laying a brick patio, and they had a bobcat. And the bobcat's pretty small and the bricks are pretty heavy, and they were moving it all like on a pallet on the forks. And these guys, none of them are college educated, but I was in college and good at math and all this shit. And so the bobcat kept tipping forward. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why don't you stack the bricks in like a pyramid? So you've got higher stacks, next to the tractor, and then they get lower and lower. And then, that'll help with your leverage, which they did that. And that saved the entire job. And they never gave me credit for that. He was like, oh yeah, we figured out how to do this. I was like, you didn't figure that out, motherfucker. I figured that out.
Right?
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yep.
So anyway, so you were mowing lawns.
Oh yeah. And then, I was, getting unemployment at the same time, so I could work for cash and double dip.
Sure, yeah.
And I was cutting a guy's grass in Charlotte. I lived in South Carolina, but anyway, my husband-to-be happened to call over there that day and was talking to his friend whose grass I was mowing. And his friend said, you'll never guess who's over here, Julie Scoggins. Well, it wasn't Scoggins then, but Julie's over here. And he said, oh, well, I got some grass over here needs mowing. If she wants some more work, send her over here when she's through. And I went over there, and he had the tiniest yard. And I looked back, it was like a postage stamp. And I'm looking back at it, and I'm thinking he wasn't even about getting his grass cut. He just, number one, I think, was trying to help me to earn money. I really think he wasn't just trying to put the moves on me. I don't think that at all. I think he was just trying to help me out because he's a really nice guy. And then when I got over there, I did all kinds of work. And we started to talk, and he had a boat and I had a boat. I was a single girl with a power boat.
Yeah, right. That's unusual.
Then you never see that. Well, I had dated a guy that taught me how to water ski before, and I loved it so much. And we would go to the river every weekend with his boat. Well, I got tired of him.
But not water skiing.
And so I bought my own boat.
Nice.
And I would take my girlfriends. We would all go to the river. We called it the hen party at the river. And I had this 1975 Cadillac Coupe de Ville that I hooked to that I used to pull the trailer and the boat.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. And I had a regular car, my little Mazda, but that was the river car, and the tag on it said LANDYOT for land yacht. It was a great car.
YOT.
Yeah, and but we would go to the river, and so when my husband and I got together, he had this boat, and he said, I've never skied behind my own boat. And I said, well, you've been dating the wrong women. and I said, why don't we go to the river this weekend, and I'll just pull you all you want. And because I could drive a boat. I mean, and so we did, and we had the greatest time, and that was our thing. Every weekend we would go to the lake, and he'd bring his little dog. He had this little teacup poodle, and a straight man with a teacup poodle.
Right. Well, it happens.
Well,
it could happen.
It did. But I was like, the first time I met the dog, he says, can I bring my dog along for the weekend? And I said, sure, but if you're going to stay at my house, I don't have a fence. It has to be small. And he goes, no worries. It's a small dog. So he rolls up in the driveway, and I'm looking out through the blinds, just sort of trying to scope him out, and he gets out of this Pontiac Fiero, which is kind of gay anyway. And then it was a sporty car, but still. And so he gets out of the car, and he gets out with this little 4.5 pound pocket dog. It was just a little tippy little yappy freak,
Yeah, pooch in a pouch.
Man, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I think he's got some latent tendencies, that he just needs to address. But I said something to him about it later. I said, why would a straight man want a dog like that? And he said, let me tell you something. I take that dog for walks at the park, at Freedom Park in Charlotte. It's a big, nice park with a lake. He goes, I take that dog for walks around that lake, and every woman on that sidewalk stops and talks to me.
Oh, yeah, right.
I said, that dog is bait. He said, yep. He wasn't even shy about it.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, yeah, that's a bait dog.
That's funny.
Yeah. So that's
how you knew you'd found your man.
Well, it was the late 80s, and I had been, going crazy. I was in my 20s in the 80s, and I was going all crazy and dating everybody and having a good time.
Right.
Let's just leave it at that.
That's what was happening in the 80s.
I was having a really, really good time. But AIDS became a very real,
it's a very real thing.
Very real thing. And it was a gay disease, but I was starting to know people who knew people
Right.
that had died from it.
Right.
And it scared me so bad that I just started getting really, really picky about, who I'd sleep with. I mean,
Sure.
just plain and simple. And so I got really, and I ended up not dating much at all for like 2 years. I mean, it was like the dick drought of 19
of the late 80s.
89.
The great dick drought
88.
of 89.
Yeah, that's what it was. But I mean, self-imposed, but still.
Yeah, sure.
And so when I got together with my soon-to-be husband, I should have known whoever broke the drought would be
The guy, right? Yeah, right.
And it was, and now here we are, getting ready to have our 27th wedding anniversary.
That's unbelievable.
I know, but I think the secret to staying married to somebody though is one of you having the job that I have, in that you can go out of town periodically.
Yeah, having a little space.
Yeah, because then you miss each other and you're happy to be back, and
Yeah, a friend of mine's dad was a pilot for most of his married life to his second wife. And he said that was the secret to the success of their marriage. He's like, every time I come home, it's like a honeymoon.
pilots are whores. They're so notoriously hoary.
Well, he I don't know that he was. I'm sure he could have been, and I'm sure as a younger
the
man.
opportunity certainly was there.
Yeah.
Staying in hotels, they put the whole flight crew up. My brother's a flight attendant, so
you
I hear.
You hear all the stories.
Oh,
yeah.
The opportunity certainly is there, hanging out in the hotel lounge.
Right.
At the end of the shift, with a bedroom steps away. I'm sure they get in trouble sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
I didn't mean to derail your.
No, it doesn't matter. I was just saying that no, this is all about you. I'm more interested in hearing about you than talking to myself. But I just remember that phenomenon and really taking that to heart when he said that. That having some space in a relationship can be the key to keeping it alive. But you also have this saying that that you're home 1 week every month for marriage preservation. Am I saying that right?
Yep, that's right. That's accurate.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's also left an impression on me. So I'm not married, but if I ever get back in a relationship like that, I'll be thinking.
It's really not that hard to do, because I'm at the point where I'm trying to not take gigs that I don't want to do.
Right.
Some of them are just sucky. I mean, they just are. Some the hotels are bad. They don't pay well. You know how it is when you're coming up in comedy. You take whatever to get the practice. But
sure.
I'm at 19 years in,
right.
And so I don't want to do those gigs anymore. But the trade-off is maybe not being as busy as you want to be.
Right.
But you have to hold on your value, or bookers talk. I mean, they're gonna, if one guy gets you to perform for this amount, and then his buddy calls you up and says, and offers you this, and you go, no, I normally get this over here, then he's going to know, because they talk.
Right. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to establish a standard and kind of commit, and then be willing to be home some. So it's good to kind of have that in place, that 1 week a month thing.
Right.
Because then I always make it like this year, this month, it'll be Thanksgiving week.
Right.
I want to be home then anyway.
Right.
It'll be Christmas week. The week before Christmas and the week of Christmas are terrible for comedy.
Okay.
Terrible, because the weekend before Christmas, people aren't having Christmas parties now. It's crunch time.
Right. Everyone's got it.
They are hustling.
Yeah.
They're getting last minute. They're buying. They're in the mall.
Yeah.
And so they're
not getting babysitters and going out.
Oh, no, they're done with all that. This is getting ready for the throwdown, for the big, finale for Christmas. And then you have the week between Christmas and New Year's, which that can be a good week for comedy, I think, because sometimes people have relatives and friends staying over from out of town, and now Christmas is over and it's not New Year's quite yet, and they want something to go out and do.
Right.
So sometimes those weekdays, like a Wednesday, Thursday in there, can be really fun.
That can be good. That's good.
They don't have to go to work.
Right.
They all got new clothes they want to wear out anyway.
Family's in town and they're sick of talking to them, so this is something you can do with the family,
So
but not
go
have a
out
conversation.
Go to a comedy show.
Yeah. Hopefully not have a conversation.
Well, they did all of that. So, yeah, Thanksgiving is going to be interesting this year in a election year.
I mean, I was invited to a friend of mine's in California. That's the guy I was talking to while I was in the car before coming in here. And it's a guy who's one of my best friends. And we had a falling out, a ridiculous falling out a number of years ago. And now this is actually the first conversation I think we've had in 8 years was today. And,
oh, wow. Well,
yeah,
good.
I mean, we've been texting and kind of like putting this phone call together, but it's really great. I mean, this is a friend who, at the time, the trajectory of our friendship is he would have been the best man at my wedding had there been a wedding, you know, and then suddenly we just weren't friends for 8 years. It's fucked up.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah, well, you know, it involved a girl. It's the way that shit goes.
That's how it happens.
But I was going to spend Thanksgiving with him and his family in California, and he let me know that some of his relatives coming voted for Trump, and a piece of me, it doesn't know if I'm ready for that Thanksgiving dinner yet.
I think that's going to be in a lot of families because it was a close vote.
Yeah. I mean, not only was it close, but Hillary won the majority of the votes in the country.
The popular vote.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not someone who says we should do away with the Electoral College just because it didn't go my way. You know, it always sort of bothers me that the losing team wants to do away with the Electoral College and the winning team says, no, it's important. That's pretty much every 4 years that argument
Yeah,
happens.
but my husband is a pretty well-read guy, and he does more research and reading and things than I do.
Right.
And he said that long before the election. We were even talking about it, and he said, there's just no way Trump's going to win this. There's just no way. He's not qualified. This country cannot possibly do that, you know, and he was shocked. He sat up that night when the results were coming in. He was up still at like 1:15 in the morning, which never happens. And he was just...
People were glued and coming unglued. I mean, it was becoming... I was asleep. I fell asleep at like 8 because I had my daughter that night, and I usually pass out with her and then crawl into my bed when I eventually wake up. And then it was one of those times where I woke up at 2:15 in the morning and I accidentally turned on my iPhone. Like I picked it up and I was walking to the bathroom or something, and it went from airplane mode to not airplane mode somehow. And I was like, well, maybe I'll see if I can YouTube Hillary's victory speech. You know, it must be over by now. And I looked on, and there's all these commentators, and they're talking, and it hasn't been decided. But, you know, then I saw that Trump was ahead. He was, like, very close to the 270 that he needed, and she was not that close. And everything they'd been saying when I kind of clocked out at 8 o'clock were, you know, they were showing all the different ways Hillary could win and all the long shots Trump needed in order to succeed, and the blue wall and this and that, names for everything. She lost them all, you know,
Well,
every one of them.
Well, it sends a message. I mean, people are just fed up.
Yep.
And my husband is very liberal, very, very liberal. I'm a little further over than he is just because I'm a registered independent and I want to be able to vote for whoever, but that I want to.
Right.
But, you know, I'm all for everybody being treated equally.
Well, that's
without a doubt.
Yeah.
I have a gay brother, and you know, I'm all about the LGBT rights and all of that. So,
yeah, that's the problem for me. I mean, the problem for me with the conservative agenda is just the social backtracking they want to do all the time. I mean, things are moving in a direction, and they're constantly trying to pull it back unnaturally to something that's, you know, never should have.
50 years ago.
And it never should have made sense in the first place, and it definitely doesn't make sense now.
Right.
It's just not the way things are.
Well, people now are black friends of mine. More than one have told me this morning. We were talking on the phone this morning, and she said she was at a gas station just the other day, and some guy just said to her, you know, we're going to send all of you back to Africa, you know, and
unbelievable.
It's just emboldened them and empowered them to now all of a sudden it's okay to act like that. And normally I wouldn't have believed. I take everything with a grain of salt. If somebody tells me that happened, especially if it's on Facebook,
right,
I'm going to say, did it happen to you? Were you there? Did you hear it? Did you witness it? Or is this just something you're sharing that somebody has told you that you not? And this happened to her.
Right.
And when I heard that, that was pretty sobering. I mean, that's not hearsay anymore. And to be fair, there was an exchange that had happened with someone else standing in the line that started it. Like the guy who said it had a Confederate flag or something on his hat.
Right.
Okay. And then there was another black kid in the line that said something to him first and started it.
Okay.
To be fair.
Right.
But my friend had absolutely nothing to do with it. And then he turns around to all the black people standing there, and that was what he said. But it wasn't like he just walked up in a line to her and said,
Right.
"Hey, oh, by the way."
It wasn't unprovoked, but it was still pretty uncool.
It was still pretty rude, and
Yeah.
and in another era, or not another era, but before the election, that might not have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a time when that was totally normal and acceptable in this country, and then we evolved past it to where it was really, really not okay. And then the thought of going back to that, I mean, that's just unfathomable for people. And I mean, I'm Jewish, and people don't necessarily know that right away. I usually tell them, but I mean, it's not as obvious a minority as being a person of color.
Sure.
And so a lot of times I'll find out how anti-Semitic people are long before they realize I'm Jewish. I remember I lived in North Carolina when I was 18, and I was dating a woman. We were driving down to Myrtle Beach. We lived in Wrightsville Beach, and we decided to take a weekend together, and we drove past some exit. She's like, "Oh, my parents live right up that hill." And I was not in any shape to meet her parents. And I was like, okay, she's like, "What's the matter? You don't want to meet my parents?" I was like, I mean, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. And she said, "What about, during Christmas? You're not going to meet my parents during Christmas?" And I said, "Well, I don't celebrate it Christmas. I'm Jewish." And she's like, "No, you're not, are you?" And I could tell when you're Jewish, you have radar for, when you're dealing with something. And I said, "No, of course not, but would it matter if I was?" And she said, "Well, it's not like I'm going to marry you." And
wow.
I was like, okay.
Well, let's just get that out there.
I know everything I need to know, and we were young. I was 18. She was 21 or something like that. I mean, we probably weren't going to get married anyway, but
the fact that she'd already made her mind up was
yeah. I mean, it was, she'd made up her mind about marrying me, but she'd more importantly made up her mind about marrying a Jewish person.
I don't understand that either, because I was raised Southern Baptist, and not the kind of Southern Baptist that you picture Southern Baptist.
Right.
Because the Southern Baptist, the church that I belong to, seceded from the Southern Baptist Convention years ago because of the Southern Baptist Convention's views on gays in the church.
Okay.
And they are very, very liberal in that regard, for a Baptist church especially.
Yours is.
Yes.
Yeah, because then you're saying the Baptists in general are not.
No.
Yeah.
But when I was brought up that way, I never thought anything about people. Jewish people were just like I was. I mean, they looked like me, and they sound pretty much like me. Maybe not quite as much Southern accent, but
well, if they're born in the South, they're going to sound just as Southern.
They believed in the same God, so I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, the role of Jesus is up for debate, but other than that, I really never gave it a second thought. If I met someone that was Jewish, my first inclination was not, ooh, like they're weird. It was like, oh, all right, what else? I never.
Yeah,
So for people to react that way when you tell them, it's like, really? To me,
it's surprising, but it happens.
It is surprising to me. I don't think they're different at all.
I mean, I talk a lot about it in my comedy. I joke around about it a lot, and I can always feel here in the South when I say something about being Jewish, I can feel the room recede. I can feel the room take a step back from me almost every time.
Well, it could be because it's unfamiliar. Maybe they don't know anybody who is.
I just can't imagine that. These aren't, people who live under a rock. I mean, I'm not playing in motorcycle bars yet. These are.
But why would that even put them off?
I don't know. I'm just telling you it happens,
That is so weird to me.
But, I have this bit that I do where, I'm not doing it this time because I did it last time I was at this place. I'm trying to do all different material. But I talk about how living in the South, I talk about Asheville being like the last notch on the Bible Belt, because it's pretty open-minded spiritually, as long as you're Christian. And when I first started dating online here, and it said, describe your religion, more than one person said things like, well, I was born and raised Baptist, but I'm open to other religions like Methodist.
That's Protestant. To me, that all falls in the same
Of course.
family.
Yeah, right. No, they would say they thought that that's a different religion. And I was just like reading that as a Jew.
One dunks, one sprinkles. I mean, what is the big deal? It's the same Bible, the same book.
Yeah, right. Well, that to them was open-minded. So it was just
I guess you just know what you're exposed to.
You know what you're exposed to, and you imagine here, like where we're performing, this theater actually was a church at one point, and it's on Church Street, and that street just has every different kind of church represented. So you can imagine growing up, you went to the same church all your life, and all churches, they all get out at around the same time on Sunday, and everybody files out from these different kinds of churches. And what's that? Well, those are Baptists over there, sweetie, or those are Protestants or Methodists. They're Lutherans. They think differently than we do. That's why we go to this church. Like, I can imagine those conversations. So people actually think that that's substantially different. For me, that's a very small shift of the needle, but I'm telling you, it's.
I just want people to be tolerant of each other. That's all you just do your thing. You do you. I do me. Just be tolerant. And that's what blows my mind about this whole Trump thing.
Right.
Is the intolerance. Is just.
How tolerant do you find yourself being of avid Trump supporters?
It depends on in what way they are avid. Yeah. Because I'm really, really, really trying very, very hard to understand the mentality. And at first I thought there's just no way that anybody could hear the things that he said in the comments and the point of view and the making fun of the disabled person and all those things that we all know about now. That there's just no way I can overlook that stuff.
Right.
Okay. And so I'm trying to figure out how people can justify voting for him. And there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I cannot believe that everybody that voted for him is a mean, hateful, racist person. They just can't be. However, the fact that they're willing to look the other way for the causes they do support kind of is worrisome.
Yeah, it scares me,
It is worrisome.
Not every German was a Nazi.
No.
But they were all complicit, and some horrible things happened. Not all. There were a very, very, very small number that were not complicit. And
not all and not all people that voted for Trump are racist.
Right.
But every racist voted for Trump.
Right.
I guarantee that.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine one single racist person that voted for anybody else. Gary Johnson or Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Or what's her face in the...
Jill Stein.
Jill Stein in the Green Party, yeah. So that being said, I'm trying to figure out what it is. I think they're just fed up, and they just wanted somebody that wasn't. I believe if Bernie Sanders had been the Democratic candidate, Trump would have never won.
I agree. Yeah, and they were saying that early on. They were doing all these, sort of.
He was outside of the establishment, outside of the political good old boy network and all of that.
Yeah, and they did these things. I saw this top view where they had people, Democrats in blue and Republicans in red. Everybody allegedly, legitimately self-identified that way. And they asked them a bunch of questions like, are you Republican or Democrat? Everybody split up. So you see the room half and half. And then would you vote for Hillary or Bernie? And then, the blue people... There were some blues and some reds in the Bernie section, and some blues and very few reds in the Hillary section. And then at the end, they were all building up to who would you vote for, Bernie or Trump, and almost everybody, except for like 3 out of 100, would have voted for Bernie. Now this is early on. Trump obviously built a lot of momentum as things went. I mean, it was like the worst things he said, the more momentum he built. It was just incredible.
I think that was all. I hope that was all just his strategy for getting attention and for getting free press, but more out. He's a a reality TV star first,
Right.
and a media whore first. So I hope that was his strategy for getting elected, was simply to be as outrageous as he could and get the cameras and keep the cameras on him. And now that
He
he's
did it.
in the office, I hope and pray that the real heart of the guy is going to show through and not be what it took to be elected, but rather the guy who really was never a Republican to start with, and who the Republican Party did not get behind
Right.
at all.
They're
Ted Cruz, all these dudes, they weren't about him. So and he gave money to the Clintons,
right.
and supported them. So I hope that now he's in there, that he's gonna use it for good, and not be as obnoxious as he was in the getting elected and to get elected.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm with you. I hope so
pray for
too.
that.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, we can move on beyond politics. It's hard. I realize every conversation I have with people, it turns to this right
but
now.
that's
I
where
think it's just-
everybody is.
Yeah, we're
that's
still
what
there.
everybody
Yeah.
cares about right now, and there's people that are upset and in mourning, and there's people that are celebrating and have hope. And everybody needs hope. When you don't have hope anymore, you got nothing. You got nothing. When my father passed away and my mom was she didn't even want to be here anymore. She missed him so badly. She had no more hope. She had no nothing. And it was devastating to see. And we as people, I think, need to have hope. So that's why I'm trying to find the silver lining, if there is one, in this whole situation. And that's why I feel like it helps to talk it out with people. Some like-minded, some not.
Yeah.
We got to meet in the middle, though.
Well, we got to live in this country together and hopefully peacefully. So.
You heard me say in my act last night, when I was growing up, my parents were, one was a registered Democrat and one was a registered Republican.
I don't even know how they did it.
Well, it was a different era. It was a
Yeah.
different time. People compromised and they got along back then. And now they're just polarized and locked down and my way or the highway. It's not the United States of America.
Yeah. I broke up with someone because she voted for Trump.
Oh, really? Just this recently?
I did. Yeah. I mean, the relationship was ending anyway, but she had never voted before and never even cared. And she was like, I don't even care. I don't believe it. It's all bullshit, And I said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I understand. She's a lot younger than I am. And I remember being that age and feeling like I didn't want to vote and my vote didn't matter. I remember saying all the same things. And I said, well, I hope you do vote, and I hope you vote for Hillary Clinton because you're a minority and you're a woman, and those are two groups that Hillary cares much more about than Trump. And she kind of disappeared on me for a while. And it turns out she had suddenly developed some interest in the election, did a bunch of research, voted for Trump. And when it was over, she called me gloating like her team had won the World Series. And I don't think she meant it that way. I think she just was like, I'm just so excited. I've never voted before. And the guy I voted for won. And I'm just so excited. And it was kind of like texting in her vote for the Survivor winner, and that's why I thought your reality TV, I mean, you didn't have to make that up, but that it's not even, it's so true. It's not a metaphor, but I sort of feel like we all watch this election unfold on TV. As a culture, we're very acclimated to reality TV. People think reality TV is real. And I think they almost felt like this election was that level of real. And so they were like voting for Trump, like they would vote for someone on American Idol.
American Idol. That's what I was just thinking too.
Yeah. And I really think that there's a lack of sophistication among some people. I'm not going to say everyone, but enough, to like somehow not grok that this is different and that this is the most powerful person on the planet. Because we're the most powerful country on the planet. This
country is so... In the 21st century, this country, the people and the culture of the United States, they are so addicted to medications, to pain medicines, to opioids.
Right.
It is epidemic. We are so doped up and so drugged, and you pair that with homes not having two parents in them anymore, There's no moral backbone here. I mean, there is, but it's not the majority anymore.
Right.
There's blended households. It's such a crazy, complicated dynamic. And then you pair that up with schools that are so focused on numbers and they don't teach anymore, and the parents aren't teaching, and they expect the teachers to do it. And you've got this whole culture of people coming up to become voting age that are so dumbed down.
Right.
That I saw Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy, Mike Rowe posted a thing on YouTube, and he's very conservative. But one of the things he said was that one of his fans tweeted him and said, "You have a huge fan base. Would you please this election remind all of your followers to be sure that they vote and that it is their civic duty?" And he said his rebuttal to that, his answer to that was, no, I won't. And the reason I won't is because it's not, first of all, a duty. It is a right in this country to be able to vote if you want to vote. But it is not a duty. Everybody isn't qualified to make the decisions
Interesting.
that you make as a voter. And if you're not willing to do the research and the legwork and really know who you're choosing and why, if you're just doing it just because everybody on your street has signs in their yards that say this is the person, just stay your ass at home.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean,
and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, an uninformed vote is more dangerous than an informed vote.
You're
in the wrong
pissing it
direction.
away.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a privilege. I think the idea about it being a duty is that it's almost like it's a privilege that not everybody has, and so because we have that privilege, it's almost like we have a duty to exercise it in order to sort of properly exercise our freedom, a freedom that we take for granted in this country. I mean, Obama just gave his last talk as president in Europe, and he was in Germany, and he said, don't take democracy for granted. Don't take this system of government that we've created for granted. It could change. I mean, I'm going to miss the hell out of that guy. I don't know about you, but I mean, in my lifetime, and Clinton was a very interesting president. I don't think he's such a terrific guy, but I think he was a very good president. But Obama, to me, is an amazing man. And he's got an amazing wife. I don't know anything about their kids, but I bet you they're going to be off the fucking charts. And, we've had a president who really thinks about what he's going to say and what he's going to do. And he may have done things that, I wish he would have done differently, or maybe things I wish he wouldn't have done. But I trust his process of coming to those decisions. And with Trump, I don't even think there is a process. The process is very self-referential and seemingly very impulsive. I don't know. We'll see. He's impulsive about his tweets. I mean, he's bullying the New York Times through his Twitter account. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So, anyway, honestly, I'm so interested and fascinated. Every conversation I've had, I mean, I'm like, don't tell me. I want to save it for the podcast. So I do want to turn a little bit. It's fine if we end up back in politics. If it happens, it happens. But, I'm a new comic. I've been doing this for a little over a year. I'm 47. So it was my 46th birthday present to myself was to go on stage for 5 minutes and hopefully for my mom's sake, get it out of my system. But as it turns out, I love it, and I really feel like it's a fit. And I see the complications with it and starting this late in life, and but
you can't let that be.
Oh, I'm not. I don't let anything stop me.
I believe it. I'm one of these people that believes everything happens the way it's supposed to, and that your path is what your unique life mission, whatever that is, that if you aren't drawn to do something until late, so be it.
Right.
It meant that you were supposed to have a career, a job that pay. You were supposed to have your daughter. You were supposed to have all these things first. And now you can do something for you.
Well, and I also feel like, I mean, my personal feeling about my comedy, and I know I have a long way to go, but I feel like I finally have things to talk about. And now I'm just kind of figuring out how exactly to talk about them in the way that's most effective. And of course, I'm learning those things. Like I have, that woman who voted for Trump, I wrote, while we were together and things were good, I wrote a really great joke about our relationship. And I shared it with her before I ever did it publicly because I wanted to make sure she was okay with it. And I've decided to cut the last bit, which to me is the best part, but I lost my audience with that last bit, especially the women. And I learned from Sid Davis. He said, you've got to keep the women in the audience happy. It's like, that's, the men aren't going to laugh at stuff that's at the women's expense in front of the women they're with.
Unless you give equal time.
Yeah, you got to give at least equal time.
You got to, at the minimum.
Yeah, no, he wasn't saying, it has to be all, in favor of the women, because that's not a believable act either. But he just said it's got to go both ways. And so I'm working with that. He said that in the context of a joke that I do about my ex and my daughter, and I don't do it so much anymore. But anyway, it was really funny. I ended up rewriting it and making it even that particular joke. I was like, well, the only way that works for me is I'm actually saying this awful thing to my daughter. That made it funnier to me, and it is funnier, but it's like awful funny. But anyhow, this other joke about this now ex-girlfriend, I cut the last piece of it. I learned after listening back, I record all my sessions, and all my performances, and listening back to where people were still laughing and still totally with me, and then where I lost them. And then I remember Ray Romano saying that he grades all his jokes, A, B, C, D, E, F, and based on how much laughter he gets, he gives it a grade. And at some point, he gets rid of all the Fs, and then he gets rid of all the E's, and he keeps getting better and better till they're all A jokes. And I realized if I applied his method, I'm not as rigorous about it, but if I applied his method to this joke, that this last piece was, a C or a D in terms of laughter. It's an A in terms of concept, but it's a C or a D in terms of laughter.
And it bothers me when I hear comics go, well, some of these are just for me.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Yeah, none of them should be just for you.
No,
right?
they're not.
Yeah.
People paid to see you, and you're wasting valuable time. And you're wasting their attention for anything that's less than what it needs to be for them.
Right.
And you have to relate.
Yeah.
You have to relate. And if you're leaving them behind, you're not up there to, spout your point of view if they don't have to agree with you, but you have to have that payoff.
Right.
At some point there has to be that payoff in the joke. It has to, they can disagree with you, but if it's so damn funny that they laugh no matter what, then keep it.
Right, it's okay, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're pissing them all off and they're like, all right, screw this guy, they're getting up to go to the bathroom now, and you see them disconnect.
Yeah, you got to pay attention to that. Yeah.
But I will say, in fairness, let me just address the disconnect issue. In 19 years of doing this, I've had numerous times, it's going to happen. People will get up and walk out. They'll take their things and leave. You cannot ever assume it's because of something you said. Because you don't know what's going on with them. You don't know if they're about to be divorced and this was their last try at getting together and going out and doing something. You don't know if they were on the fence about whether or not to leave the kid home with the babysitter tonight and maybe try to go out and have some fun, and now they got a text.
Right.
You just don't know. So when people get up, even if they're right on the stage and leave, for you to rag them and to give them crap for leaving, I never do that. Because you just don't know their story. Right.
I think that's a pretty good...
And I've had people not laugh the whole set. Years ago, I mean, we're talking 15 years ago, there was a couple, I was doing a show in Goldsboro, North Carolina, of all things. It's just a nothing, podunk little, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base is there. There's nothing there. And there was a couple, and maybe a teenage daughter was with them or something, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever. And they just weren't very happy. And they looked like, folded arms, classic
Right.
Closed posture, the whole thing. And I thought, man, they just don't like me at all. And I was really stressing, and it was giving me a headache, on stage. And so at the end of the night, I'm standing over selling my little swag, my little T-shirts and stuff. And they came over, and the woman touched me on the arm, and she said, I just want you to know that 4 months ago, my teenage son committed suicide. And this is the first time that we've been out. And we needed this so bad. And, I'm like, I'm thinking, why weren't you laughing if you needed it so bad? But the point of it is that just because they weren't cracking up and drinks weren't flying out their nose and slapping their thighs and slapping the table doesn't mean that you were failing.
Right.
And just don't let those things, it's hard, especially when you're new as a comic, to look out over the audience and see people that don't look like they're digging you and obsess on them. The whole rest of the room could be dying.
Right.
But that one table is looking all pissed off, and you're like, God, what do I have to say to get them? And you start working on them. And I've seen comics actually lash out and call them out. What, you don't speak English? What the hell's wrong with you people? Or somebody pissing your Wheaties, or, they'll say something.
Right.
And I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. You don't know what's going on with those people. That guy might have concealed carry. You don't know. He might bust a cap in your ass in a minute. You don't know. So just don't judge.
Yeah.
It's hard not to, but don't judge.
No, it's true. I learned that. I teach yoga also, and it's really the same thing as a yoga teacher. You'll have people who come to your class, and they never seem happy, and they always sit in the back, and they leave right away, and it feels like, God, this person's been coming for 6 months, and I just can't seem to get through to them. If you weren't getting through to them, they wouldn't have been coming for 6 months.
True.
And occasionally that person will come up to you at some obscure time and just say, I just want you to know how much your class means to me. This is the 1 hour of the week that I have to do something just for myself, and I come to your class, or
Nice.
that kind of thing happens. And it's the yoga version of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I learned, fortunately, in that arena, that applies. I did have a thing the other night where I was performing at sort of like a half open mic, half showcase kind of event. It was not a strict open mic because there wasn't anybody could go up, but it was in a place we do open mics all the time in Asheville, and these guys just did kind of an informal show, and they asked me if I wanted to go up. And so I did, and I ended up having the best set of anybody that night in that room. But I was up for like 15 minutes, and I was having a great conversation with the people in the sort of front, in the inner circle, but in the back, they were just talking so loud. And I tried to get them, I even sang to them in the back. It's like, hey, you in the back, and I got everybody singing to the people in the back to get them to stop talking. And we got them to stop for literally 4 seconds. I was like, thank you. And then,
they weren't there for comedy.
No, they weren't there for, they had been heckling and got in fights with other comics. It had got pretty bad before me. And the comic before me actually they went up and took the mic out of his hand, and he gave it to him willingly. That
sounds horrible.
It was horrible. And I went up after that.
Oh, God.
But I actually had like a really great set because I just won them over somehow, and
good for you.
And
That's quite a feat.
No, it was a feat. But there was a time in the middle where I was saying, they were still talking in the back, and I said, I feel like nobody's listening. Now I feel like nobody's listening. And the people in the front are like, no, we're listening. And I said, okay, then you know what the problem is? I just need to focus on you guys who actually do care and not worry about the half of the room that, is indifferent. And then everybody applauded that. That was like the loudest applause. So it was like me having a really honest moment, which I think actually those are the best moments in comedy, those honest moments. And so anyway, and then from then on, then they were mine for the next 8 minutes or whatever till it was over. And those people eventually left. They finally left.
They weren't there for comedy. You were in the way of their hooking up.
Yeah. Well, I was like, you guys, there's 30 feet down the hall. There's a bar where you can have this conversation and it's appropriate. You're just in the one room where you're not supposed to be talking.
Right. They're just assholes.
Yeah. It happens. So, but I just think it's amazing that you've been doing this as long as you have. And I mean, I know that, I mean, that's what it is. But I still, when I meet somebody who's doing, you've got just the best attitude of anyone I've met. You seem to really enjoy it. I mean, last night we had a half full house, and that didn't seem to faze you one bit. You were like, I love that audience. I had so much fun.
They were all 110% mentally. They were right there, dialed in. I mean, what more can you want? Just more of them?
Right.
Don't and never ever punish the ones that showed up.
Right.
For the ones who didn't.
Of course.
Damn, they're here. You know, they came out, and that's another thing. That's another pet peeve, and this is an amateur move that I see amateurs do, and that is acknowledging that the crowd is small. I never ever acknowledge that the crowd is small. Why? Why point out that everybody didn't think this was as good an idea as you did?
Right.
Why point that out? You know, if anything, if you're going to acknowledge it, you know, it's like, well, they missed out. Look at this is awesome. That we need to grow this.
Yeah.
You need to be telling people about this when you leave here and go back to work on Monday. You need people say, "What'd you do this weekend?" You tell them. I went to Gutbusters, you know, and at the Hendersonville Theater, and we had an absolute ball. And everybody was great, and it was fun. A good night, you know.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was a real lesson for me. I mean, my opening joke was to that extent, but it was deliberate, you know. I was like, I was going to do some crowd work, but, you know, there's so few of you, maybe we'll do some couples therapy, you know. So, I mean, I think it's a clever, fun thing to say, and it's kind of engaging the crowd in a different way. My ex-girlfriend was there with her new boyfriend, so she was like, we talked about it today. She's like, no way I was raising my hand when you asked that question. So
I guess maybe what annoys me more about comics that do that is that they're not original with it a lot. And that's original, what you said. But so many of them say, you know, we could have all ridden together. We could have done this in my hotel room. You know,
right.
I could have just sat at your table and done it. And that's not original. That's been done. And I think when you are truthful and more sincere, I just like that. And maybe that's what is really more annoying to me than actually acknowledging that they're in a good crowd.
Yeah.
Is doing it in a hacky way.
You're right. Yeah. The whole hack thing. I mean, every once in a while, I have this one thing I do right now, and it feels totally hacky to me, but people laugh at it. And I don't know if I should do it or not. You know, it's like...
What is it?
So I have a mustache right now, which is not my normal look. You've never met me before, but I don't generally have a mustache. It's Movember, and that's, you know, when a bunch of yuppie men manscape their faces to look like their favorite 70s adult film star and raise money for prostate cancer. And I said, you know, if they were honest, they would call it porn stash for prostates. You know, and people laugh at that because it's alliterative, and
sure.
You know, and it's cute. But I feel like an idiot for saying it because most of my stuff is way more. You got to be following my brain to get there, and I do very few lines like that. Mm-hmm. But they work.
That's not hacky.
No.
No.
It feels it.
Well, eventually, it won't be this month any longer, and you'll stop saying it.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the other thing. I try not to do material that's so temporal. You know, I don't like to do current event material. I don't like to do political material. You know,
that's what people want. And just who do you like to watch? Who do you admire?
I mean, among the long list, Louis C.K., Chris Rock. I know that's such low-hanging fruit, but I have really what I consider to be sophisticated reasons for liking those guys.
Why is it low-hanging fruit? Just because they have such mass appeal?
Yeah, just because they're so famous and everybody's heard of them, you know.
But there's a reason. There's a reason that they are so famous and everybody's heard of them. And it's not because they avoid topical material. It's not because they write stuff that's got legs, that's got longevity. It's because you can go and listen to their latest CD, DVD, whatever, and sort of get a grip on how you feel about stuff too, and compare your thoughts. That's what people are doing. They're searching for validation. You know, when they listen to comedy, I think, with their points of view and everything. Yeah. And I don't want to commit to politically on stage to one side or another, because my whole goal in talking about anything political is to bring us back together.
Right.
And it's so polarizing, and I don't want to do that because I think there's enough of that. And believe me, I mean, the people that are willing to pick a team and commit to it, you have your following. Everybody has their following. You know, Jeff Dunham has done, ever since he came up with that Ahmed the Dead Terrorist, he just did Carnegie Hall. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
It's worked. And he is totally a Trump supporter, and he's totally right. And then you've got Louis C.K., and then you've got Kathleen Madigan, who refers to Trump as the Great Pumpkin. And, you know, Bill Maher and all the classic extreme left.
Right.
And they have their following. So it's not bad. It's just that I feel like there's enough of that, you know, so I want people that can have their opinions and still find the common ground that we all have. Because I think that's the hope, is getting back to where we can agree and compromise and learn how to give and take. People don't know how to compromise. I mean, kids don't know how to do it. That's why there's so many fights and issues in schools and bullying, and because they don't know how to talk stuff out. They don't know how to come to a middle ground. Nobody knows how to give and take anymore.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, no, that's not right. Bam.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
well, I remember it really stood out for me last night during your set when you started talking about politics and you did not say who you voted for. You went right past it.
Yep.
And it was so great. And I remember as a comedian sitting in the back, studying what you're doing, you know.
And they're braced to see which side I'm going to...
Yeah, but you didn't even come... You didn't give it to them, and they lost interest. They didn't care because they were so... And what I mean, they lost interest in your political affiliation. They didn't lose interest in your act.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they were just so like, great, well, okay, so you went right by that, so I think they knew they weren't going to get it, and immediately were interested in what you actually were going to say.
This is a fresh point of view.
Yeah, that they could all get in with.
Somebody's not going to lock down and say, damn it, this is why I think this needs to be this way.
Right.
For once. Everybody friggin' does that. Everybody now. My way or the highway. This is why. And everybody that doesn't feel this way are an idiot. People use that word dumbass, idiot, moron all day on both sides. And it bothers me. Because we're not all idiots. Yeah, there's some. But, you know, that's everywhere. Everybody's got their little group. But overall, there's a lot of really super educated, smart, intelligent people with high IQs that have voted on both sides of this thing.
Right.
And we can't all, on the one side, be idiots. You know, we're not. So I just want to get in the common ground, and let's start where we agree and work outward.
Right.
And figure out where we're starting to break it down. It's starting to break down, and we're starting to split, and then fix that. I know it's easier said than done, obviously, but it just breaks my heart to see everybody so hate-filled.
Well, you so genuinely, I'm listening to you, and I have the advantage of watching you and just seeing your passion, you know. Yeah. But I think you so genuinely come from that place that it works. You know, it fuels your act, it fuels your conversation, it fuels your relationships, I'm sure. You know, I think that's not the come from place for all people. You know, I think it's very easy. It's easier to identify with a position, a point of view, another group, whatever, and have that be a starting point. It's very hard to have the starting point be common ground and, yeah, let's work this out. I mean, that is hard. It's risky. It's vulnerable. Requires humility. There's a lot of things involved.
That's the key right there. It's risky. It's vulnerable and requires humility. That's very well put, but it's true. And people have got to get back, I think, for the success, for the survival of all of us. They need to work at it. You know, if you're not good at something, you can get better at it if you try.
Right.
And people are just lazy, you know, and it's easier to just side with everybody that around them that says, okay, it's not fun to be the unpopular one. They have the unpopular point of view, And in the South, for you to be left, you're in the closet.
Yeah.
Why? It was a 50-50 vote almost, there's a lot of them around. It's just that one group is more vocal and more demonstrative than the other. Is that why? They're more intimidating?
Well, it wasn't 50-50 in the South.
No, not in the South, but
it wasn't
in
even
the
close.
country.
In the country, yeah. But
Right.
I mean, the vote pretty regularly, even when the Democrats win, even when Obama won, if you looked at the map, just the geography, most of the landmass was red. And it's just that, the people who live in cities, the more urban and therefore, seemingly higher percentage of educated and intellectual people. I'm trying to be very careful how I say this, because I am not interested in disparaging anybody in this
Right.
statement. But I'm just saying, in those kinds of environments where people are drawn to the urban lifestyle and they do tend to be educated and it's faster moving and it requires a different skill set and experience set than other ways of life. Although there's very few things that are more sophisticated these days than farming. It's like you got to be
It's a
a
science.
rocket scientist to be a successful farmer these days. But, generally speaking, those people live on the coasts, and in Chicago, and a few cities peppered in between. And that's where a lot of the money is in the country, but it's not where a lot of the food comes from. Like I've been imagining since this election, I was like, what if we actually split the country back up? Texas has been talking about seceding from the Union for a long time, and everyone's like, yeah, go for it. We don't need you or like you. But I just had this thought, like, what if the blue states became one country and the red states became another country? Like, would that be better? And I was sort of playing it out in my mind. I haven't concluded it, but I was like, wow, if that happens, we lose a lot of our food, or we have to buy our food from this enemy state. We're no longer, it's no longer.
Then what would the blue have that the red needed from them?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know if there'd be anything, except entertainment. We could charge them more to watch movies.
Yeah, because all the entertainment people, all of them.
Yeah, that's all.
California.
Yeah, I mean, the Californians, they refer to the entire, 3,000 miles that separates L.A. and New York as the flyover states. I mean, it doesn't get any more obnoxious than that.
They would need art, interior design, hair dressing.
Yeah, I mean,
fashion design, all the things that are typically gay, and flight attendants. I'm going for the stereotypical
right.
gay stuff.
Who would serve drinks on airplanes if we split the country in half?
Lesbian EMTs. I don't know. That's a good thing to think about. What would each offer the other? Besides farming, what would the red states offer?
Yeah, I don't know.
That'd be an interesting thing to sit down and really think of, because
I can't think of too many things that are more important than food.
All right, well, everybody has to have that.
And I don't know where most of the water is apart from the Pacific Northwest, and I know we have lots of water normally here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's not right now. We're in a drought. There's forest fires. It's never happened.
I bet Texas doesn't. They would have to get their water.
They would have to get their water.
They got the Rio
but
Grande.
the Rio Grande is dried up by the time it gets down to Texas.
True.
Now they have oil. They'll always be able to buy water. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Like, I started to think about it.
It is.
And I just also imagined, I also imagined, like, if Trump had lost the election, I wondered if we would end up in a violent civil war quickly. Like, the Democrats are taking this pretty well. We're upset. We're marching. We're protesting. We're signing petitions. That's as aggressive as we get, But the guy in the store who accosted your African-American friend,
mm-hmm.
if he was doing that from a place of having won. So he's still full of piss and vinegar about his racist perspective has been validated.
Right.
But imagine if he still had all that racism, but now he was filled with hate and bitterness for having lost. Right. That's what I'm saying. Then what's that going to look like?
Well, the African American community was way, way, way more incensed with the Black Lives Matter thing, with the cops shooting, the unarmed black men.
Of course, yeah.
Of course. And then you saw, the riots. I mean, Charlotte. I'm from Charlotte.
Right. I was performing that night when those riots started in Charlotte.
You were in Charlotte?
I was in Charlotte that night. That was the night of Spanky's. I was at the Comedy Zone the first night of the riots.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, to an almost entirely black audience. Like,
wow.
I mean, not entirely, but 2/3. And that was my first time performing to anybody who wasn't, from Asheville.
Interesting.
So, not really. I mean, I performed in other communities that were maybe more ethnically diverse. But this was not overly diverse. It was, a large African American population.
And that's really unusual. I'm surprised to hear that as well, because Spanky Brown is one of the most broadly appealing comics that I know, and he is funny no matter what color you are. He's
absolutely,
a wonderful human being.
Oh, he's the best.
Yes, he is, and I just adore him. He and I share the same comedy anniversary. We
Oh,
started
really?
the exact same day, the exact same year.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And in the same place?
No, he was in Memphis, and I was in Charlotte, and we did not know each other. And we just discovered this years down the road, and just were comparing notes. Or maybe he put it, I don't remember how it happened. He put it on Facebook or something. Today's my comedy anniversary, and I was like, oh my God, me too.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it turns out that we now have the same. So... yeah, he's one of my closest. He's stayed at my house numerous times.
Oh, I love the guy.
Yeah, he's great.
I met him at a party. The guy who I inherited the Gutbusters gig from, he had put together a party for some friends, and Spanky came up and performed at the party.
Nice.
And everybody wanted to talk to him and whatever. And I just, after all that had died down and he was, kind of recovering, I introduced myself and told him I was a local comic. We talked for a little while, and we had 3 separate conversations that night. I didn't want to be obnoxious and kind of glommy and all that shit, but I was a comic, and he kind of enjoyed that there was a comic there he could talk to, not just fans. And by the end of the night, he had invited me to host his special in Charlotte.
Oh gosh, so that's how that happened.
That's how that happened. Yeah, it was just I said, you want me to send you a clip or something? He's like, no, you already made me laugh tonight twice. I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah, he was really good. He's, cause he understood. He's like, you just sounds like you just need stage time, And I was like, I'll go anywhere for at least 10 minutes. I'm like, I'm not driving to Charlotte for 5 minutes anymore, but I'll go for 10 because it's enough. It's like, it's, and so he let me host. He said, yeah, you should host. That'll be good. You get up and down a few times. Like, that's what you need. Just get back up on stage, get over the jitters and all that. So there's just something very, big brotherly about the way he reached out and just how present he was like that. It's really cool.
Oh, he's the best, and he's got a sister named Avis that'll just kill you. She's so funny.
Is
and
she a comic?
No,
she's just funny.
No, she's just funny. I'm friends with her on Facebook. Some of the stuff she says, and he has various radio stations. He'll do one for a while, and then he'll stop, and then he'll go somewhere else. He's had internet radio stations and stuff, programs.
Uh-huh.
Shows, and I was on one in Knoxville, Tennessee when he used to live up there. I came through and went on it. It was a sports talk thing, and I said, well, I don't know anything about sports. I'll come be on there, but I don't know anything about sports. But we'll just come on there and we'll just be funny and cut up. And his sister called in there, and I'm telling you, her name's Avis Moore. So look her up on Spanky's page.
Okay.
On Facebook, on Avis Yeldell Moore. Look her up. Anyway. So it runs in his family.
Yeah. Well, there's some people who are just gifted at telling a story, and it's always funny when it comes out of their mouth. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how to be me on stage, how to be much more just the guy who I am. That takes a
long time. Let me just say, I thought I had me at 10 years. No.
Still no.
No. I'm evolving 19 years in. I just got done listening to Kathleen Madigan on Netflix night before last.
Oh, which one? I just watched her too.
Bothering Jesus.
Yeah, I just watched that. Yeah. Oh my God. So funny.
She is, and she mentions in there, I've been doing this 25 years, you know?
Right.
And that gave me a compass, like a gauge. You know, at 25, I've got, 6 years? 19, 20?
Yeah, 6.
I can't do math without my fingers.
No, you were right straight out.
I've got 6 years to be there. And at her level, of her conversational style is just effortless.
It is.
Effortless. And I could listen to her all day. And what impresses me about her too is, and some of these big stars, they don't have a big finish. They don't have that big closing bit like everybody wants.
Right.
They don't. They just talk till they quit.
They just end.
And then they get this standing ovation. And it's not that they shot fire out their ass at the end of the set. It's that the whole thing was so good and so personal. And that everybody just knows her and they feel like they know her.
Right.
So that's where I am. I mean, so when I was asking you earlier, you know, who do you like and why? Well, then you got to do what they do. You have to write things. You know, you can't just do. I was going through Alabama the other day.
Right.
Stuff. All comics do that.
Yeah.
Telling where I was. They have a sign. Their sign. I saw a sign on the side of the road.
Who gives a shit?
Louis C.K.'s not talking about stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think my material is, without treading on his, I think it's pretty close when we talk about our kids. You know, I mean, the only problem is my biggest gripe about Louis C.K., apart from him being infinitely better at this than I am, is that his kids are just a few years older. So he's already talked about everything I could possibly want to talk about because he's experienced it. And he not just talked about, like, it was on his last special because his kids are 3 years older. And by the time, you know, I've watched it a few times on Netflix and my daughter's going through it, I'm like, I got a funny idea. And I'm like, I'm like, fuck, he just talked about that, you know.
But your circumstances are different.
Oh, yeah,
and your view is different, too. The circumstances could be the same. You know, kids do this, but the way you deal with it and the way your kid reacts to what you do and things like that are all you guys. You
yeah,
know?
totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just like, oh, crap, it's already been done always, you know. So, and I'm learning at 19 years in, you know, I learn all the time. When I watched Kathleen Madigan the other day, a light bulb went off. And I'm like, that's what I want to do right there. So, and last night was the first time I've been on stage since seeing that.
You know what? That's fascinating because when I watched you last night, the first thing I thought when I saw you, I was like, she is just so relaxed right now. Like, she is just up there shooting the shit with us. She just happens to be on the stage and we just happen to be sitting in the audience. Like, that was the feeling. So
good. That's the way she comes. That's the way Kathleen Madigan
so I just
comes
wanted
across
you
to me.
Yeah, I know. So I wanted you to know.
Good.
You know.
Oh, that's the best compliment ever.
That was exactly my experience of you last night.
Oh, wonderful.
And I had that realization, like, it was moments in, and I was like, oh man, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm trying to just seem that natural. I mean, I felt pretty unnatural last night for a lot of reasons. I don't know why I invited my ex-girlfriend to come see me.
I was just going to say, I bet that had a lot to do with it.
But, well, it did for a few different reasons. I mean, she was there, and then there's someone I might be interested in seeing who was there, you know. It's like, so I had both ends of the spectrum. And I was talking about someone I just broke up with who's like in the middle, you know. So I had different reasons for feeling mildly insecure about the material I was doing and just being up there. It was also my first time hosting this venue. I've been at the venue, but my first time hosting, I felt responsible and feel responsible to you. You know, there's a lot going on at once. I was just very conscious. I mean, people were laughing. I mean, they enjoyed it. There was one point in the middle where I completely got lost. I just started talking. I was like, I had forgotten anything that I might have been intending to talk about. And then I found my legs and finished up. But there was, now it just happened to me again. But I could feel how, like, stiff I was. And, you know, maybe it's because I was wearing a suit and it was all buttoned up and it's brand new and fits nice and snug and tailored. And I was, like, stuck in this tailored suit. That's how I felt while I was performing. We'll see how it goes tonight.
Are you going to wear that again?
Yeah.
When I first started doing open mic, my very first time, I wore a suit, a pantsuit. It was teal. It was this dark teal, ladies, very tailored, very smart looking, businessy looking suit. And I didn't know what you were supposed to. I thought I wanted it to be classy.
Right.
I wanted to look nice. I don't really do dresses because I'm too tomboyish. I'm really tall, and I don't know. I just like pants, you know. But when I look back on it, that wasn't me.
Right.
I don't dress like that. I bought that because I worked at JCPenney, and they gave you a discount on anything you could wear to work. And I bought it, you know, to wear to work.
Right.
At my job for Christmas time. I just worked there for like 2 months or something around Christmas. And they had tall stuff, you know. It's hard for me to get women's clothes that even fit me. And but my point is that it wasn't me.
Right.
And like, I don't wear tennis shoes on stage. I just don't. A million and one people do, but I just don't, because I want to be just a little bit different than everybody in the room. I mean, I want to look like the talent.
Right.
And so I've had to come up with this look that is a unique enough to set me apart from the people in the room, but not so sterile or so corporate or whatever that isn't me either, you know. So you got to get that blend of you that works,
right,
for you to be totally comfortable on stage and able to be you and
well, it's you know
relate.
Yeah, I mean it's me trying something.
Yeah.
You know, and trying something in a room and in a venue where I think it behooves me to be a little classier, you know, to look a little nicer.
You set the tone of the show.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the host of this event. You're the first one people see. It's a theater, you know, it's not a biker bar.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I see it,
Yeah.
and it classes up the joint.
That was the
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I asked Brendan, I was like, make sure you dress up for this. You know, he shows up in khakis and a polo. I'm just like, okay,
like,
that's probably the best
you
you got.
Make a joke about
you know?
it, like what did he say? I look like a, not help desk. What did he say?
Oh, did he? I heard him. I didn't hear what the joke was, but I heard that he joked about
and
it.
it was funny. He said, I look like a IT guy or something like that, or he worked at Target. There was something.
Yeah, he did look like he worked at
Yeah,
Target.
because he had on khakis and a
red shirt. Yeah,
yeah, but and he was so funny.
he is funny. He's terrific.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
So yeah, you just got to find what works for you and puts your head where it needs to be. I like music to walk out to, and a lot of clubs don't do it. For one thing, you have to have a person that's willing to go back there and and load it in, and then hit the button and turn it off when you're in place. And
Right.
it takes a sound guy,
Right.
you know. And a lot of times there's one person doing 10 jobs already, and they just don't have the man to do it or the woman to do it. But I think that adds a lot to the show. There's music playing before the show begins. Then when the show starts, it has music, and then there's walk up and walk down. When you see people on Conan, Letterman, Leno, all the shows, all late night, Fallon, they got a band in the room.
Right, they got a band, sure. Playing something exactly perfect for that person.
Perfect for that person.
Yeah.
And I just think that, and it's energy, and it hits at the right moment, and it puts that person's head where they want to be and validates them, makes them feel like, oh, this is professional, this is top notch, man. So they come out with a little bit pep in their step. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I inherited.
It's a mental thing.
You know, I inherited this venue from someone, and he chose for his intro music as the host some heavy metal shit. So I came out to heavy metal last night, which is not me. I come out wearing a full suit to heavy metal, and then I'm smiling, and everyone's happy and applauding. I grab the mic doesn't work, and the guy kept the music on for way too long. You know, I had to start like banging my head because I had nothing to do because they certainly weren't going to hear me, even if the mic had been working. And so it's like we've got some kinks to iron out there. So they didn't bring music for you though, right? Because I just introduced you and you came up. I got confused last night because you were standing in the room. I was prepared for you to be off stage.
I didn't even know there was an off stage place to be.
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. But I just figured you. And you had said to me on the phone, you're like, listen, the one person you don't have to worry about this in the equation is me.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one who's been doing it for 19 years. Worry about the feature and the guest, just rein them in because they're going to be your problem, and so
just make sure that they understand where they need to be when and all that, because they're the ones that don't have a habit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it was fine. It was just so because
by habit I mean a work habit.
Yeah.
Not a bad habit.
They may have a habit.
They might have another one, but
yeah, there's a pretty good chance. It's certainly one of them. I had sent him a message today. I was like, how about tonight when you're done that you say, thank you, you've been a great audience, good night, and then I'll come out on stage. Because last night he just stood there and kept talking. It's like, I'm just going to stand here until Jason comes out and takes the mic out of my hand. I was like, that's not how you finish. And so I walked out immediately. It ended up being a comedic moment in itself, but it was
he's a quirky
funny.
guy, and he's got a really peculiar, different style anyway, and so it was okay. But yeah, he needs to have something that signals I'm done in what he says. I mean, he needs to say his name again. Thank you guys. You've been great. People are conditioned for that as an audience to know.
And as a host, I don't want to just walk out and take the mic out of his hand.
What if he's not ready?
Yeah.
What if that wasn't it? He
Right.
said it's his last joke, but he's an artist.
Right.
That may have been part of something. You don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
That may have been something he does all the time and then continues to talk because that's funny. You don't know.
I mean, that actually happened with you last night. You were like, all right, well, I'm going to get out of here. And so I left, and kind of went around back. And then you did another 10 minutes, which is fine. That's when you sort of introduced your merch and everything else. But it was exactly what you're saying. Like, just because you said you said you were done, you weren't actually done.
I love one-show nights.
So...
One-show nights are so fabulous.
Oh, because you can
because
be
there's no
relaxed. constraint. Yeah.
You can talk as long as you want to, and I also like when there's no check drop. Because in a comedy club, where they bring the drinks to the table,
right?
Where they have servers moving about,
right?
There's a point, typically 15-20 minutes before the end of the show, they will start to give everyone their tabs.
Right.
That's a very hard time to keep people's attention.
Oh, right.
And a lot of the time, too, it's all the men that are distracted because that's who's paying the bill.
Right.
And so the women are still looking at you. And if you can look at it that way and kind of break it down by, the dynamic of what's going on right now while everybody seems to not be paying attention to me as well. It's not total, but it's...
No,
definitely
that's a
fragmented.
good point. Yeah, you can feel it.
Absolutely.
And also, it's a sign to the audience the show's winding down, and they're going to have their kind of emotional response to that. They're like, "Oh, it's just getting into it,"
But it's better, like this show, where that doesn't happen,
right.
Where the bar is outside and people have to get up and go out. So you don't have that distraction to contend with. So that's nice.
Yeah.
That's what I like about theater shows.
This is a great venue. And
it really is.
And the audience is fantastic every time.
They were unbelievable.
Aren't they? I mean, they just make you feel like you're the best comedian ever, They just really come to laugh, and they bring their joy, and they're happy to be there, and I love performing there. I really do.
It's a great place, and I hope it keeps on. I hope it's successful and comes back for another, just stays. You're not going to do seasons, right? Is it a season or is it
not technically. I mean,
is it once a month?
It's it's going to be about 7 times next year. I think they did 5 times this year. There's going to be 7 next year.
So not even once a month.
Not even once a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that infrequent.
Yeah. Well, they have to dance around the theater schedule because they have a lot of plays that they do at that theater, and that's really their purpose.
Right.
So as long as we're doing it at that theater, we're going to be sort of beholden to their free weekends.
If they make money off of it, then you'll go up in the priority, hopefully.
Yeah, well, that's the marketing business. So we're working all that out.
Sure. Oh, well, I hope so, because it seems to be off to a really great start.
Yeah. Well, we're really happy you're in town, and I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me today. I don't even want to stop, but I know we both have to get ready to go perform in a little while. And
Well, good.
I just think you're awesome, and
Aw.
I'm happy I got to meet you. You know, I mean, it's been really nice since the first moment we talked on the phone. You know, it's just, I don't know, it just felt like an old friend who I just called for the first time.
Oh, how nice.
So-
How old? I'm just
Not
messing with
elder,
you. I'm just
just,
messing with you. Well, thank you. I'm glad to do it, and I know this hasn't been the funniest thing, but it's sincere, you know, and it's just, you know, behind the scenes stuff, and how you feel about the comedy and the art and it's not all just joke, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't bring people on this podcast to tell jokes.
Right.
Yeah, this is, to me, this is my opportunity to get to know somebody, and this is my audience's opportunity to, you know, join in that experience.
I like it.
And hopefully it appeals to people enough that they listen. But I think it's great. And no, I mean, you're the perfect guest. You know how to talk and how to not talk. Yeah. So no, it's you're a consummate professional, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So-
Anytime.
More importantly, you're an extremely genuine human being, and that's really the reason it's nice to have this with you. So
Well,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll
All
do it
right.
again sometime.
Let's go to work.
I'm so happy I got to sit down with Julie. She had me rolling from the first time we got on the phone together. This wasn't our funniest conversation, but it was great getting inside the head of someone like her. I just love her, and I can't wait to see her again. If you like what you heard, please visit our website, use our Amazon portal, and rate us on iTunes. Make sure you tell your friends about us, and if you feel so inclined, please consider making a donation on our donation page. That way, we can keep failing for years.